All right, welcome everyone to this week's episode of DTV, Democratic Television. This week, I'm joined by local activist and former city council candidate David Hayes to talk about a few recent incidents and kind of the need for reform here in the city. So, David, thanks for joining.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think, most of our viewers would probably, recognize the situation, but would you just want to give a kind of a breakdown of what happened last week, last Friday with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, last Friday, early morning, last Thursday night was the day that Robert Bailey was killed while in police custody. So when the community heard that news, we sprang into action to figure out more information, and then start advocating for justice to make sure we get the information on what we need. And in that effort on Friday, I was meeting with the fam, meeting with lawyers, working with them, and then a group of folks in the community decided to go to the public meeting where the search for the next police chief was being conducted. And we participated in that meeting to raise awareness to Robert Bailey, but we also participated in the conversations around like police reform and things of that nature that was going on. Pretty civil discourses going on throughout the entirety of time. At some point in the meeting, I step out just to talk to some other officers, just to get their gauge on what they're feeling, specifically Officer G, who is someone who's being recommended to be police chief. I wanted to talk to him, see what's up. And then as I was going out there, police, specifically the sheriffs, then arrested me. They put their hands on me and then let me know I was arrested, had a warrant off of my arrest. Wouldn't tell me what the warrant was for, and I was being compliant. And once they made it clear they was gonna arrest me and take me back, I pursued my rights as an individual, as an activist, somebody who whenever I'm faced with an unjust arrest, like's been done in decades from the sit-ins movement, actually in civil rights. Whenever somebody tries to unjustly arrest you just go limp. You don't resist, you don't fight back, you don't punch, you just let your body, you just let gravity take over. So that was a tactic I pursued. So they ended up carrying me to the booking area, to the back. And once I got behind closed doors, once I got away from all the people who were there at the meeting to participate in the meeting and to raise awareness for Robert Bailey, once I got behind closed doors and they could no longer see me, then I proceeded to be essentially beat up for the next, what felt like, half an hour or more. Honestly, I'm not even sure how long I was back there. And yeah, I proceeded to get punched in the face, banging my head against the wall, pressure points being hit, choked, all these things. So end up getting it was a lot. So and then once I left for the county jails, I was able to get out in a timely manner, because whenever you have misdemeanor warrants, you're supposed to just be let go. You're not supposed to have a whole dramatic thing. So I was able to be out of the jail within a few hours because of that, and because dozens, if not hundreds of people were calling the jail and asking for answers on my behalf, which really helped me make sure I was safe when I got into the jail and I got out timely. So yeah, that was last Friday.
That is quite the whirlwind, I know. And I was actually at the meeting too, and I saw it happen. It was, really unfortunate. I don't know what your thoughts were, but I thought the meeting was going well. And, there's been a lot of obviously issues with the police and the community, but it seemed to be some good conversations happening, and that just seemed to just ruin everything. And I know there's a lot of mistrust, especially with the Black community and the police department. So like, what are you like, is there any way to amend that bridge? Like, did it just totally ruin any chance?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's like we're having a conversation about a new police chief and talking about police reforms and how to make public safety actually safe for Black people, right? And then Black people can't even come to the meeting and talk about those things without getting arrested. A warrant of all things, something that over the years we've said time and time again, warrants not be served at public events, right? We have this the sense beyond a sense of like mistrust. It's just flat out on safety around police, around the administration, around the city whenever they do these public events. We have to fear for our safety. So it's unfortunate. So until we need to see actual changes. There's not going to be any more trust built. As the same system keeps rolling along. The same people are still there, the same policies in place. Until some stark changes is made, we're just going to see this mistrust and understanding that our safety is at risk. That sense and understanding is just going to grow.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess, there are a lot of advocates, pushing for changes, but then like, what are some of the policies or, changes that you and other, activists are pushing for with KPD in the city? Like, are there specific policies or, as we search for a new police chief, are there attributes you'd like to see in the new police chief?
I mean, so there's a number of things, right? So like policies and practices, especially when it comes to giving out information correctly, right? Robert's Bailey family deserves to have all the information having to do with his death, right? They're not being given it. I deserve to have all the information about why I was arrested. Apparently there was a KPD lieutenant who called the sheriffs to have me arrested, right? That's one of the numerous things, where like possibilities that could be happening right now, right? So the policy and practice of giving out information around everything having to do around arrest interaction with police, right? Actually doing that is like square one, but beyond that, ultimately we got to have alternatives, right? Like if we having police as the ones who solve social issues, who serve out warrants, who deal with mental health crises, right? Who deal with different situations, right? Like it's just a recipe for disaster, So if we actually had alternatives to police being funded, Anthony Thompson Jr. would still be alive, right? Because somebody would have sat in that bathroom with him and talked to him for as long as it took for him to calm down and for him to come out alive, right? Robert Bailey didn't have to die. Robert Bailey got pulled over for a headlight. Just for a headlight, right? That's not really putting anybody in danger, right? It's saying, for the sake of public safety, we want to make sure that your vehicle is working, right? Why do we have police stopping people over, running them warrants, and like people dying from headlights and taillights being out, right? So we got to have more things other than police to deal with issues in our community.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I know, so the city and KPD recently started this co-responder model, right? And then there's a couple other alternatives. I think is it HEART? Can you talk a little bit about kind of some of the other models that are out there for alternative response programs?
So there's what most folks in the community have been saying, and grassroots organizations and groups have been saying, that we need alternative programs, right? So programs that exist without cops, right? Where it's not a cop responding, right? So that's what people have been asking for. The city's response has been to institute a co-response program, right? Which is a cop responding with another professional, right? So that's not what we're asking for. It shouldn't be a cop with a social worker. There shouldn't be a cop with somebody in EMT. It doesn't matter who else shows up with the cop. There's a cop there, right? There's the threat of violence there. There's the threat of criminalization. There's the threat of your life being uprooted because of what those cops' actions could be, right? Every single day we have social workers and caregivers and folks going in the community, knocking on doors of people in unstable situations, making sure they got the medication, committing bonus checks, people who have no guns, who are not cops, who do this work and are equipped to. People are going to homeless camps, right? People are like intervening into crises all the time, right? So we know it's possible for us to do this, right? We just don't have very many capacity in those areas, and it's even criminalized. They even criminalize you whenever you try to help out other people in the community. So instead of just solely relying on cops, we gotta make sure that we have these alternatives. And the co-response program is not it. And you mentioned HEARTS. HEARTS is what we would like to see, right? Health and emergency. I think it's essentially, mental health care professionals and social workers essentially being able to respond to issues. And you got that combination right there, you can solve most things, right? You can actually de-escalate. You can make sure people get the services they need that put them in the situation in the first place, right? You can help people deal with conflict, right? You can actually accomplish a lot without the threats of death from a cop.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it seems, we have historically invested in mental health in this country, and it's just, I think a lot of it stems from that. And like you said, if a cop shows up to a mental health crisis, it just almost always inevitably escalates the situation. So that seems right to me. I wonder, do you know of other, I know there are, cities that have done this type of model. Do you have any other cities that have used this model that you could point to just as examples?
Yeah, the most popular model is the Cahoots program in Seattle or Eugene.
I was
Maybe
gonna say
it's
Oregon,
Eugene.
maybe. Yeah.
Eugene, yeah, I think, yeah, either Portland or Eugene. I think Eugene, something like, but it's Cahoots, Cahoots. It's been a very successful model where they're actually doing just this of having people who aren't, armed and licensed to kill, actually come and deal with problems and be able to deal with them effectively. So there's and that's just one of many things, right? And these are one thing we also got to remember, right? Our communities, we already do this in a sense, right? That's also one of the terrible things about gentrification and urban renewal, right? Because communities have traditionally been able to handle things themselves. There was a time where if there was a dispute on the block, you go to the elder, but they can handle it. There's a time where it's just like, yo, you trying to like domestic violence happening? Nuh-uh. Neighbors is gonna come in, step in, right? Somebody's having a mental episode. We're not gonna look to like put violence immediately on them. We're gonna look to help them, right? These things are actually indigenous and native to our communities and happen, and will like typically happen without anybody even like saying it. People step up when they're able to. So unfortunately, the state of our communities nowadays, right, being so displaced, being so polarized, the level of poverty being so much, the level of disconnection from generation to generation, we've lost a lot of that infrastructure. So a lot of this is sounding new. But it's really not new. It's really, it's really human nature to take care of ourselves. And right now, the police state, the criminal justice system, that is actually against our nature, and it's only meant to control us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, so I know you and I were both at the city council meeting last night too, and I think you talk about systemic issues. I think it's clearly in Knoxville we have a systemic issue with law enforcement, and as you were there, you saw it. I mean, it was frustrating to see some of the responses from our city, leaders last night. And I mean, what are your thoughts on like what should we be seeing from leaders? What can we be doing? Like how should they be responding, and how can we demand better from them?
Yeah, I mean, so I think if we had leaders that moved from a place of what is best for people, what is best for communities, how do we keep people safe, it would be very obvious what to do. The very obvious thing what to do would be to join the side with justice, saying we are going to release information, and not only are we going to, as a city, for instance, as a mayor, for instance, saying I'm not only going to release all the information to have access to, I'm also going to advocate on your behalf to the county, to the DA, right? Because when we're talking about the sheriff's department, we're talking about the county, right? We're talking about a backwards institution, a white supremacist institution in which that we have very little power to really move there, right? But in the city, a lot of folks in this democratic ran city, a lot of folks had high expectations that we would have an administration and leaders who would actually be speaking up on our behalf. But that's not what we're seeing. Unfortunately, power works a certain way, right? And we have a power structure. Specifically, we have a mayoral administration who was chosen their side. They chosen the side of the powerful institutions, not the people. They chosen the side of KPD. They chosen the side of KUB, letting them just charge people at the wazoo just for living, right? They've chosen the side ultimately of the district attorney's office, right? And we've only really seen them strife of that was like a year ago, right? And they actually got pressured to do so by us, right? So and that's really the key, right? Unless we bring forth tremendous pressure, right? Unless the people in power are unless they are afraid they're going to lose something, whether that's politically or whatnot, right? We're not going to see them act correct in the situation. We just intend to see this cover up become more cover up, right? And what we're trying to do on the community side is make sure that we bring as much pressure, we let enough people know where they can't get away with this, because usually they get away with this. People like what happened to me happens all the time to people. People are disappeared all the time. A lot more people die in police custody than people even know, right? And they just get away with it. So we're hoping in this case In this case, we're gonna say like you can't just look the other way and just do a cover up. No, you actually have to give us answers. You actually have to discipline officers, right? You actually have to bring forth some policy changes because if you don't, that trust that you were talking about before, they'll have no hope, absolutely no hope in building that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was wondering too, just given your kind of stature in the community and your name recognition, like, do you think that has, I mean, because like you said, Black people have been harassed and, killed even by, police and law enforcement for years. Like, do you think that impacted, how they treated you, and like, how can we kind of use that and just your platform to elevate the issue? And I'm just wondering how you, personally view that, because I mean, I know I thought that,
Yes.
like, David Hayes, if they do
Mhm.
something to David Hayes, it's going to be a big deal. So I was just curious.
Well, Brady, when did you move to Knoxville?
2019.
2019.
Yep.
So that was the year I ran for office.
Right.
So what you missed in Knoxville's history was this would happen to me all the time. 2018 was the last time I was arrested by KPD. And that time they almost killed me. Talking about jumped on top of me, choked me out, all these things, right? Um, when a white person came over to argue with us, right? And then KPD comes over, jumps on me, no other arrest, nothing else happens, you know what I mean? And then my friends have to tell the cops to let me breathe in order for me to survive that interaction, right? Years after that, at another protest, right? We was marching on the street, cops come and single me out, right? Bam, and then arrest my friend and slam them against the ground. Right. So this is unfortunately, unfortunately, I'm very familiar with like this trauma, right, and this pain and this injustice, because this is really the story of our ancestors, right? The civil rights movement. It wasn't not if it was easy, right? People didn't just sit in bars and then like eventually people let them eat there, right? Or say like, oh, we're also gonna fund your schools. Like no, like during the sit-in movement, people got beaten up, right? It was rough. It wouldn't the fight for justice has long been bloody, right? Selma, right? All these instances, right? Long been bloody. So it's not a surprise that somebody who is as outspoken as me, right, gets this sort of repression from the police. It's like it's an equation, right? This is just like what happens. But it shouldn't be that way. It's not normal. Nothing about my treatment is normal. So now that it's 2022, I've ran for office twice. I'm done running for office for the current time being. Now they're back on it, right? They're like, okay, now because I got this warrant. The warrant that they arrested me for was a warrant back in March, or excuse me, April, back from when we were having the protests having to do with Anthony Thompson's Jr.'s death, right? That's when they gave me a warrant. Out of all the thousands of people who was marching on those streets that night, they gave me the charge, me for who I am, my politics, and my position, and who I am in the community.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't arrest me this whole time up until now, right? Because they was probably afraid it was going to help me win this city council campaign by
Yeah.
putting me in the news, So they waited, right? And then yesterday, and then last Friday, they was like, okay, today's the day, right? And it's a question of how far this goes, but we do know the Knoxville Police Department, the
Yeah.
sheriffs, and I suspect the district attorney is just gonna also escalate their position as well. So um yeah, this is why I ran for office, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this happening, because it's not just about me. I don't want this to happen to other people. Like this happened to Carson and Calvin. I hate it happening to them. I don't want it to happen to the next generation, the folks I'm mentoring. I don't want this to happen to them. So this is why we fight for political power and we fight for these changes, and we try to build institutions in our own community to take care of ourselves, because ultimately, the people in power, the current system as it is, it's just gonna keep perpetuating this violence.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there was clearly a message to be sent there, right? The warrant was from more than 6 months ago, and they chose that instance to arrest you, which is just, to me, is like a clear indication of what they were trying to do there. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
I've been wondering, like, how do we make sure to hold these folks accountable, and like what can we do? And like, they just had an election, right? Like half the council just got reelected. So I'm like, well, they're in there for the next 4 years, so they don't have to worry about a re-election anytime soon. The mayor's up next year, but like, I've been struggling, personally, like, how do we what leverage do we have for these folks to make sure that they actually do something about this? Because, you know, a lot of them just got reelected. They're not going to have to be in front of the voters again for 4 years, if at all. So like, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what can we do, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's also, I mean that's the typical story when it comes against injustice, right? Because injustice only happens in instances where there's a power imbalance, right? You have people who are here, you have people right here, and the person right here, you know, gets stomped on, and the question is, what do we do to that person way to those people way up there, you know? So, you know, I think that's a good question. I think we do have, I mean, we do have some leverage, right? I think public opinion does matter, right? Um, it does, you know, especially this being on Democratic TV, you know, I mean, if there's a large part of the Democratic base in Knoxville feels a certain way, it actually it means something, right? The reason why that we saw Imogen Cannon able to buck up to the county a little bit, right, when it came to some COVID measures and whatnot, was because she knew she had the backing of a tremendous amount of her base, right? So I think it does matter, right? So in the case of just like, you know, in every single space, you know, any sort of political space you occupy, you know, from a neighborhood association to whatever, being like, yo, why did this happen to David Hayes? Why did this happen to Robert Bailey, right? Always putting that in, sharing, right? Making sure if you ever have an audience with anybody in the political establishment, you bring this stuff up, right? So that in itself is important. And you know, the mayor is up for election soon, right? That is coming up. So she does matter. But you know, beyond that, you know, I mean, I think pressure also looks like, you know, numbers as well, right? So when we I think in the future we're going to be intending more things from my court dates, right? I think folks can attend my court dates coming up. My next one's on January 20th, but we're gonna have more likely to have more after that, right? Showing that physical solidarity. If there's another visual, right? If there's a call to action towards another county meeting or city meeting, things like that nature, making sure that you're showing up, being proud. And you know, I think if folks are in any sort of like organizations, right? You know, whether it's a neighborhood organization or community organization or professional organization right now, take a stance. Take a stance of what's going on. You know, release a statement. Say you support this. Say you support that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, in my case, you know, we're really prioritizing funds going to the family right now to pay for an independent autopsy and other expenses, right? So if you're an organization, like make sure folks in the organization are all donating to that and sharing that out as well, right? It's crucial. So yeah, I think all that's where it starts.
That's great. Yeah, and another thing I wanted to touch on, I don't know, like I hadn't looked at that organization that's helping with the police chief search too much, but you know, I know Tyler spoke about the 30, you know, points or whatever. Have you looked at that, or like, I don't know too
No,
much about that.
I haven't
Yeah.
looked at that, and I'm glad Tyler did a good job of like pointing out those points of like, you know, what they would like to see is from like de-escalation and the value of life and whatnot, you know. So you know, I think those things is good to remind, good principles to remind ourselves of. Because unfortunately, law enforcement can be so barbaric that we oftentimes forget that it's, you know, having like policies such as valuing life, right? We also, you know, we forget that should even be a standard or you know, a measuring, a bar to set them, because we expect, because we're just used to them, it's not even coming close. So I think it was good to raise that up. I think ultimately it doesn't matter who they bring in, it doesn't matter who the next police chief is, especially if it's a former cop, right? It's the same system's gonna go, right? I think we have the same, if it's the same mayor, the police chief doesn't really matter, right? The police chief answers to the mayor. So I don't think it really matters. You know, I think if the mayor really wanted to say like, we want to actually be organized as police department and make some changes, you know, you could even look at like, why have one police chief, right? Why not hire people in the community to be a council to be at the top, right? Why not really reorganize this police department, right? Decentralize it in a way to where people in this community actually have more power over the policies and practices of our police department, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not reorganize it to where if something goes wrong, right, and police have to be disciplined, that the community members have a say, right? Why can't there be a council of community members or elders being able to say, offer chaperone my abusive, racist, arresting officer, whether he should be fired or disciplined or not for his actions, right? We really got to start thinking outside the box, because the system as it exists, it doesn't matter what face, what name, who comes in to hire them. It's going to be the same stuff. They could have came in and chose the last police chief. What happened to me would have still happened to me on Friday.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I know we've got Park, right? Police Oversight or Advisory and Review Committee, but I think what
Mhm.
it sounds like you're advocating is like a real community policing program, right? Like where we have, like you said, community
Well,
oversight. Yeah,
specifically community control over
right,
police, right? Community
right.
control over public safety, because community policing, that's been like a term used for all sorts of stuff, right? But also let's not forget about the county. The county doesn't even have that, right? So yes, we want the police advisory review committee that oversees the Knoxville Police Department to actually be powerful mouthpiece and have a say in the disciplinary, budgetary, and policy things, right? But we also need that in the county. The county has no instances of any of that. It's the Wild Wild West, right? It's most like I have no problem calling them a bunch of white supremacists and fascists and just like folks who go along with it, right? Sure, you can find a couple of good people here and there. Most of the good people leave. You want to find a good Knoxville sheriff? They already left, right? They couldn't take. You want to find a good county administrator? They probably already left because they couldn't take it. So what's going on in there is backwards. And hopefully, while we're on it, also the DA, the district attorney as well. They've only earned mistrust, right, and only done misdeeds as far as like not even giving information over people's death, not prosecuting killer police and abusive folks, right, and going after our people like pit bulls. Like they are just relentless with it. The reason why anybody looks up to anybody in the district attorney's office is beyond me, because those people are the slave catchers of right now. So yeah, just I just want to make sure that we're giving everybody the love they deserve.
That's fair. We're an equal opportunity show here. Yeah. Well, that's very great. We got a couple minutes left. So I know you mentioned there's a GoFundMe, right, for the Bailey family. Like, how can folks donate? How can they support you? How can they support that family?
Yeah, there is a GoFundMe for the family. It's called. Let me see. I'll just pull it up.
We
So
can
I
put
know
it.
people are.
Yeah, we can put it on the graphic too. The actual link.
Okay, cool. I'll send it to you. You can put it on the graphic. And yeah, so that's where people are sending fund support to right now. Still, it's like waiting here to see like what next steps we're trying to see with this body. There's a lot of behind the scenes, y'all. This family is getting done dirty, right? The treatment of Robert's body and the whole situation has been very unfortunate. So we're still trying to figure out the best ways, move forward with the family. Some more information to come on that. If folks want to support me, I'm just asking people, you want to send something to my Cash App or PayPal, that's cool. But for the most part, whenever we have a call to action, which we don't have right now, I wish I had one. I wish I had a place for people to go to stand with us right now. But if let's hear about it, I want folks to come up and support. And in general, support the movement, right? Like support people who are advocating for police alternatives, right? Really be critical of the police. I know there's a lot of people who are watching this who's probably going to be back to blue and it's like going to have a hard time believing what I'm saying. But when people are telling you that oppression is occurring, you got to at least listen and investigate it.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And I actually am working on a petition that folks can sign. Hopefully we'll get that out sometime soon. I want to get, you and others to look at it. But yeah, I think we're about out of time. So thanks everyone for tuning in this week to Democratic Television. I'll post those links that David mentioned on the graphic here, and we'll hope to see you next week. So thanks for joining.